Welcome to the Movie Business Podcast, picking up where Movie Business Book left off. I'm Jason Squire, hosting a wide range of industry talent and executives to answer fundamental questions about the business today. Here we go. We're getting ready to discuss the secrets of getting paid with ROB AFT, president of Compliance Consulting, an LA-based finance and distribution consultancy serving banks, law firms, producers, and distributors. Rob has worked as a top executive in distribution and sales for independent distributors and also served 7 terms on the board of directors of IFTA, the Independent Film and Television Alliance. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Jason. This is great to be here.
Well, we're so lucky to have you be able to discuss the secrets of getting paid. Let's divide the conversation between individuals getting paid and independent production companies getting paid. So for individuals, what are the pitfalls that come to mind?
Well, this is a business that often exploits people, has to be said, whether they're producers, financiers, actors, directors. And so I think it's often harder for individuals to verify that the person they're working with is legitimate and has a good track record for paying his employees. But it's still possible. You can still try to contact other people that have worked with that producer or with that distributor or whoever is paying you. And these days, obviously, with Google, it's easier than ever. And you can also try to see if the person's been involved in lawsuits, or if it's enough money to delve into their criminal history, you can find out they've spent time in prison. And so, those are very simple things. I can't tell you the number of times people have come back to me and said, oh, I'm not getting paid by this person. And I said, well, that's because you did a deal with that person. Everyone knows that person never, ever pays the people he owes money to. Why did you do that? And often the response is, well, it was the only deal in town. Okay, well, hopefully they learn something from the experience, and next time they'll check out their partners and have some flexibility and be able to choose more wisely.
And another example of this ability to sort of track your own business life as an independent contractor. You mentioned when we discussed it earlier about understanding the contracts. When you sign a deal, however informal, make sure it's in writing, as people always say. And what else?
Well, one of the big things is understanding everything in the contract. Don't rely on a lawyer or your friend or your family member to be there and tell you, oh, well, that's just a standard clause. Don't worry about that. It's your signature on that document. And if you don't understand something about it, demand an explanation. And especially in the areas of payment, what do you have to do in order to get paid? And what happens if you don't get paid? What's your recourse? So just understanding all of those aspects. And a lot of people can't afford lawyers. And so you sometimes have to educate yourself, but there are a huge number of resources out there. And a cheap plug for my book. I think you were going to post a link to it. I wrote it's completely free. I do not get paid. A book that covers a lot of these topics for the World Intellectual Property Organization. And it's a free PDF on their site.
Wow, that sounds great. Thank you. And also in terms of finding a lawyer, there might be a lawyer amongst your friends and family or general acquaintances. I guess researching the web is a possibility. And also Beverly Hills Bar Association, if you're in Southern California, has a legal advice system. They can connect you with a lawyer, possibly, if it's something that you simply can't afford.
Right. That's a great resource. And it's important that you don't have your cousin, the trust and estate lawyer in Southern Indiana, trying to negotiate a film distribution deal. It's a very specific area of the law. And just basic copyright licensing is already a specific area. and it's just really important that the person doing those contracts and helping you is familiar with not only the terms and conditions that are particular to the industry, but also the players, the other lawyers who do this on a regular basis, who know each other, and you'll save money going with one of them.
And what about that moment if an actor doesn't get paid? What is the recourse?
Well, it really depends on the person who's not paying you. If you're not being paid by Warner Brothers, then there's definitely a problem. And you have to figure out what the problem is and get past it. And if you're not getting paid by someone who's a notorious criminal that never pays people, then what you have, you have to figure out if in your contract you can, if you have the right to hold up their distribution, get an injunction against the picture. Usually contracts don't provide that to actors, or you see films getting pulled from distribution all the time over minor complaints. But it really is depends on the agreement you signed. And in some agreements, there's very, very little that you could do. You don't have much of an option to sue someone, because a lawsuit like that will take a substantial amount of money, and even finding a lawyer that would be willing to take it on is going to be difficult. So you have to know, and you should know these things before even undertaking a job. What can you do? And how can you hurt that person? How can you make them suffer for not paying you?
And also word of mouth, right? Word of mouth is a real factor.
Sure.
I mean, it's a very small town wherever pictures being shot.
And you have to be careful, because there are slander and libel laws, and if someone is a criminal, and there are lots of them in the business, you really have to be careful. They have insulated themselves, and they're very litigious. And if you say the wrong thing about them in a public forum, they'll come and sue you. And so be a little bit careful about bad mouthing people, especially in writing, and that includes on the internet. But definitely you can you can let people know. Usually there's a good reason people aren't paying you outside of potential criminals. People run out of money all the time. And so it's important, if you undertake especially if you're an actor, to know that there's enough money to complete the feature. And sometimes you can require that the feature film have a bond attached to it that guarantees completion of the movie. And the bond company will also, in many cases, require errors and omissions insurance, which requires that all copyright elements, including the actor's performances, are written in contracts, signed contracts that have fulfilled their payment requirements. Otherwise, the errors and omissions insurance would step in and force that payment.
Well, thank you. Let's turn now to independent production companies and how they get paid. One style is, of course, it's essential to first have a domestic distribution deal. Very important, not that easy to achieve. And then once that is in place, because the deal is likely not to equal the budget, overseas deals, which are very labor intensive, are often crucial.
Right. And the entire system has changed so much with the streaming services stepping in, and the recent disappearance of the theatrical markets, which are coming back now. And it's really, but in the last, probably since I started in the industry, but probably in the last 20 years, let's say, the independent side of the theatrical distribution market has really shrunk dramatically. The number of cinemas that are available to independent films, and just the audience. You can sit at home and watch amazing shows on television, films on television, foreign films, documentaries. Unlimited amounts of content are available very cheaply in your home and on your beautiful TV with your great speakers and no gum on the floor, and popcorn's much cheaper, and it's really taken away from the audience. And so what's happened is that the streamers are often the only game in town for the big money on productions. So usually they will not pre-buy a production, and if they are stepping in at any early point, it's through one of their known associates, one of the people that they work with all the time. Skylar Moore, who's a LA attorney, recently did a podcast kind of thing for IFTA where he talks about this, where in order to get a deal with Netflix, you can't go to Netflix. You have to go through someone that already worked with Netflix. And there are some good reasons for that. We don't have the time to go into, but those are often global deals. And it's challenging because they will pay quarterly over a 3-year period, starting when they first release the movie. That's their standard deal. But I don't know. I don't think they really go outside of that. And the other streaming services are generally the same or worse. So you can imagine in high interest rate environments how waiting for 3 years to get, actually 4 years if it takes you a year to produce the movie, how that can be challenging for your investors or your credit card or however you finance the movie. But they do pay. That's the great thing about the streaming services. As long, if they're there, they're going to pay. As long as Netflix doesn't go bankrupt, they will make their payments.
And so it's possible to, if you totally independently finance, say, a low-budget movie, and it gains traction among buyers, and Netflix makes an offer which is appealing to you, then that money changes hands very, very soon. Is that right? Well,
it will start changing hands over, when Netflix has taken full delivery, which is onerous, and independent filmmakers need to understand that 25-page delivery schedule, they need every element on it, and sometimes that can cost a lot of money to produce. But you need to do that to get paid. You need to give them everything they need for their distribution, and then they broadcast it. And on that day, they'll send you the first of 12 payments, of 12 equal payments that they'll pay you over 3 years. So it takes a long time, especially if if you financed it through any sort of a adjustable rate loan these days. You're paying 8 or 10% a year, probably.
Gosh. Well, that certainly is a different process than independent distribution deal. And let's turn to theatrical for a moment, and especially the little-known world of overseas distribution, deals that are made territory by territory. Sometimes, right. And again, the assumption is a domestic distribution deal must be in place before any overseas buyer is interested in your movie.
Well, that becomes kind of a chicken and egg situation, because in most cases you can't pre-sell a movie in order to the domestic marketplace. Very difficult. And so you have to wait until you've completed the film, and for films that are likely to perform well at festivals, wait for the film to get into the right festival, whether that's Sundance or the Cannes Film Festival or Telluride or whichever festival is correct. And then you have to hope that it gets seen by someone who loves it, wants to champion it, and either will invest the huge amount of money that it costs to release theatrically, or a streamer sees it and wants to take it off the market immediately. But let's say that it does get picked up by A24, and they want to release it, then you have to give some serious thought to things like, if they spend $1 million releasing it, they have to recoup that first with interest before they start paying you anything. And in a lot of cases these days, you don't get paid in advance on that distribution deal. They're going to want to put whatever they can into the release itself. And so they're going to pay you after they recoup their expenditures and then sell it in other media. Let's say, in most cases, a film will not recoup its initial release costs just from the theaters. And so you're hoping for the money to come from transactional video on demand, which is a big market for independent films, or from streamers, and eventually possibly the other TV services that are out there. And then, like you said, the overseas markets they're challenging because it's the same situation there. People are relying on the streamers for the bulk of their revenues, and not all markets are as advanced in that area as the United States. So the prices still seem to be fairly low. The theatrical markets for independent movies in most countries are very challenging. But people are taking that as an opportunity to get creative. There are opportunities here now to make money from film festivals, films that, because of the difficulties in distribution, a lot of filmmakers have started to focus more on festivals and the possibility of making money through festival distribution. Not only will they often fly the director and some cast out to the festival, but they will pay a fee. It's not a lot, $500, $1,000. I've heard fees going a bit higher to the filmmakers to defray some of the production costs, and that can be huge, especially with niche markets like LGBTQ films, for instance, because there are festivals for that genre of filmmaking all over the world now. And they do charge their patrons for tickets, and they sell a lot of tickets. They give some of that back to the filmmakers. So depending on your target audience, that might be an option. But it is important, if you're going to be working on getting the film into distribution overseas, to work with a sales agent, as Jason pointed out. And sales agents take fees. Everybody takes fees. And sales agents will take anywhere from 10% to 35 or even 40% of revenues after recouping their costs. All of that's spelled out clearly in the contract. A lot of people don't realize that the projections, the estimates that are often provided by the sales agents are not promises or guarantees. And some very reputable sales agents often don't come close to achieving the sales that they've projected. And that depends on a lot of different things. It might depend on the market that if you had gone to try to launch the film in early 2000, you would have had a big problem because the film festivals were all canceled and the markets were canceled. So it can depend on a lot of different factors, or they like the movie more than the distributors and the audiences like the movie. And so you can't rely on those numbers. You have to choose a sales agent that believes in the movie, that has a good track record with similar films, and that you feel comfortable with. It's like a marriage. It's going to last for the next 5 or 10 years, and you have to trust the person. You have to believe that they're going to do what's best for the movie, and that they're going to give you the contractually negotiated payments.
Well, this has been really such an informative conversation from from someone with a unique breadth of experience in getting paid. So we want to thank Rob Aft, president of Compliance Consulting, on the Movie Business Podcast for being a guest to talk about secrets of getting paid. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Jason, and good luck to everybody.